Hi, friends. Hello, the world. Welcome to this episode of Tools for Transitioning Humanitarians. I'm your host, Estella Monova, and today I want to talk about something that came up yesterday in my group coaching on big transitioning for humanitarians. And by the way, if you're not part of it, you should absolutely be part of it. We're having amazing discussions and coaching. So the topic that came up is 1% versus 99%. And I will explain to you in a minute, but I think this is something that many of humanitarians are in this situation, whether they are deciding to leave or not, or maybe they have left and still considering whether to continue the humanitarian work, meaning coming back or doing something else. And this client of mine was saying that she feels like she's already a yes to transitioning and doing something different that she wants to do. But there's like that's the 99% of her desires and wants, and that's what she wants to do. And then there's this 1%, she says, which is still not letting go of the humanitarian career and saying that, well, I could actually continue my humanitarian career. And if you find yourself in this situation, and maybe your percentage is like it's arbitrary, obviously, but your percentage is maybe even 50 to 50 or 60 to 40, right? Whatever the ratio is of wanting to go and wanting to stay and not letting go. This is how I would love to propose to think about it, because this is the thing is that if we keep hanging on to that 1%, or if we keep ignoring that 99%, there is one reason why we're doing that, right? And the reason why we're doing it is because we're not really believing, or in other words, we're afraid that what we want, the 99%, even though that's a great dream and all, it may not work out at all. And that's why we just keep hanging on to something that we know that we already have, even though maybe we don't like it to the fullest or all the way, but we know what it is and we have the known uncertainty in some way. And therefore we just hang on to that. And the reason why we're doing it is because we're not believing that the 99% of our desires and decisions and all of this is going to work. Right. And in the case of my client, what I found very interesting is that she said that she already refused to several of options to go to the field and work to field missions. She refused already uh, because she wanted to be next to close to her parents and all of this, right? And then I said, well, then you decided, right? You decided that you don't want to pursue the humanitarian career anymore, based on the actions that you're taking, meaning that you already refused the missions that shows that you are going for the 99%. But she was saying that, I'm not sure. And that shows that she wasn't owning, right? So the decision that is already made, but she's not owning. And when you think of the 1% and you are not letting go of that 1%, one is you're not believing that what you're creating is going to work, and that's fear, right? Because if you really truly believed it, 99% or maybe even less percent would be enough to go off and do the things. And we just believe that the other thing is that we believe that we should be 100% sure that this is going to work. And when we're telling ourselves we should be sure 100% that this is going to work, what we're not also doing it, we're not really taking the responsibility to say, well, we are the one who's making this work 100%, right? It's not like someone else is going to come over and do this for us, or it's not going to be we can outsource this responsibility to someone else and figure out, and then by the time you finish, then let me just go and live that life. That's not how it's going to work. So therefore, either way, we're taking responsibility for leaving and going off and doing what we want, or staying and making the situation of humanitarian career the way that we want to, but not being in this in between, because in between space is where a lot of energy drainage comes, a lot of fear gets reinforced. A lot of doubts keep being entertained. We just keep being indulging in this confusion and doubt and fear and all of the things, and that's not going to help us build the excuse me build the future we want, either in the humanitarian sector or going somewhere else. Now, I was challenging my client yesterday with this analogy. I said, okay, let's imagine you are in a marriage, and let's imagine that 99% you're convinced you want to leave the marriage, and 1% is, I could also continue living because I don't have the alternative, right? Because she was saying that the reason why she doesn't let go altogether is because she doesn't have the alternatives. And I said, imagine it was a similar situation only with a marriage. How would you handle it? And she said, well, obviously I would leave. And I said, well, what's the difference, right? What's the difference? A similar situation in the way of the situation we don't want to be in, the situation we really want to be in, and we would leave if it was a marriage. But if it was a job, we don't. Why? How is that possible that we can overcome our fears or doubts when it comes to a marriage, but not when it comes to a job? And of course, you can also argue that they are not comparable, they are totally two different things, and all of this. And I get it. But the point is that if we're able to overcome our fear and leave the marriage and go to the unknown and to the land of uncertainties and where we don't know what's going to happen and all of this stuff, and we're willing to do that and we're able to overcome fear, that shows that we are capable of doing that, right? We're capable of overcoming our fear. So why then, when it comes to the humanitarian work, we're not willing to overcome our fears? What is stopping us? What is the reason why we are willing to do this in one scenario, but we're not willing to do in another scenario? Even though fear is the same, meaning fear of the uncertainty, fear of failure, fear of not living the life we want to, all of this stuff, right? Yet we're willing to do this in one and not in another one. And the other thing that I want you to think about is that the more we stay in this in between of not letting go of the humanitarian or not letting go of our idea of um, going and doing something else, if we just keep being in this situation, we're not living the life we want to. And I think that is the biggest tragedy, I would say, in terms of how we experience our current life, right, matters because we know that life is given to us once and we want to live it in the way that makes us feel like, my God, I can't believe this is my life. And that's what I would love to suggest to you as an option. And if we're going to do that, then we actually want to be building either which way, either the humanitarian work or the other. And the other thing is that if you believe that you don't really see yourself long term in the humanitarian sector, then why are you still not letting go of that 1%? Because you don't see yourself in the future in that place anyway, then why hold on to that 1%? Right? The same goes with marriage. If we take the analogy, we would ask ourselves, do I see myself with this person for the rest of my life? And there is always an honest answer. And if the honest answer is no, then we are willing to leave and build our lives somewhere, right? And the same goes for the work. Now, as I coach my clients on this topic of not staying in this in between place, because in this in between place, we're not building anything. We're not creating or exploring options most of the time. We're just staying in our confusion and indulging in doubts and fear and reinforcing it and reinforcing it. And the more we reinforce it, what do you think we're going to do? We're likely to go back to what we know best. And that's just how our brain is wired. Our brain is scared of the uncertainty. Our brain is wired to be scared of not knowing where we're going. But at the same time, we have a great tool within us that says we have the trust, we have the belief that we can make the new thing work because we have made the other thing work already. So why are we doubting that if we are able to do this once or twice in the humanitarian sector and make it successful in the way we want to, if we are able to do that, why wouldn't we be able to do that in another sector? And if we have the argument of, well, it's going to take time to do this, yeah, staying in between is going to take up a lot of time. That's why there's no need to be staying in this in between, and rather go full in on either side, whichever the one you choose, whether you choose the 99% or whether you choose the 1%. I love to think about, okay, whichever the side I choose, I'm going to be all in. I'm going to make this happen. Whatever the goal that I'm desiring, the feelings I'm desiring to have, I am going to make it happen. Yes, well, it will be challenging, probably. Can we make it less challenging? Also, probably. Does it need to take a long time? It doesn't, right? We just believe that it should, but what if it didn't? What if it didn't take as long as we believe it did? For instance, I used to believe that when I built my humanitarian career, it took me 10 years to get to the place where I felt like I could now make all the impact I want, right? And I believe that it took me 10 years. But then if I think about now my journey as a life coach, I feel like it only took me 2 years or even less. It could have taken even less had I not gone to Ukraine in the middle and focused on other things. So that's why it doesn't need to take long. And when we keep arguing with ourselves that, well, it's going to be hard, and that's why we shouldn't let go of the 1%, ask yourself, what are you trying to achieve with that? Right? If you feel like you're in that situation and you say, I can't really let go of that 1%, what are you trying to achieve with that action? Are you trying to continue being in that in between? Do you want that? Do you want to be in that in between? Right? And if you don't, then what if we start creating the alternative or going back to the humanitarian sector and making that a great place to be? So we always have the option of going either way. And if we have the option of making either way a great place to be, then which one would we choose? And when I say we have the power to make it a great place, many of you may say, well, I don't know it's possible and all of this. But in all of these conversations that we're having with ourselves, we're basically not trusting, believing ourselves that we can do this. And why are we not believing? And that's the part that we need to work on it. Because as long as we don't believe that we are capable of making a great place to be, whether in somewhere else or in the humanitarian sector, then we're likely to be living our life in between of, I don't know if this is for me, if this is not for me. And we just tend to spend a lot of even years on this. And I would like to help you prevent that. Because every year, every month, every day, every week, right, is so precious. And I would love to live life, especially as I'm getting older. I can see and understand how life is so precious and want to soak up everything of it, right? And therefore, how to do this in the way that we choose whichever the side, and I would love to suggest to choose the side that you have the 99% because you have your reasons for doing it, choosing that, and then going full in on making that work. Because the alternative is keep waiting for things. Alternative is keep being in between. Alternative is keep reinforcing the fear. Alternative is keep wandering around and whether this, whether that. Alternative is being in the place you don't want to be and keep forcing yourself. And if that's not what you want to do, then why not go and build what we want to do? So, my dears, I really wanted to give this message to you, and I hope that this was helpful for you to think about from all the different perspectives of why am I not letting go of that 1%? What am I trying to achieve with not letting go of 1%? And how do I let go either the 1% or the 99%? And which one would I let go if I really believed that I could make either one work? So have a beautiful week. And if you have any questions or want coaching, absolutely come over coach with me. I would love to get you coaching on this or any other topic that you feel like that is not getting you to the transitioning that you want. Thank you so much.